Welcome back. You are watching The Fix with me, Karima Brown. I'm in conversation with Social Development Minister Lindiwe Zulu. Minister, let's focus now on COVID-19 and gender-based violence. We've seen reports, I've certainly read reports from other countries that domestic violence and abuse is on the increase. South Africa has terrible statistics in this regard. You have made a number available for people who can call at any time if they are in distress. Can you just tell us, in addition to this number, what other mechanisms, if any, considering these really difficult circumstances, are in place to assist people who are survivors of domestic violence, and what can neighbours do if they know that abuse is happening at a certain house in their community?
Yes, one of the issues we raised was to call upon the communities to really not ignore or look the other side when they know that something is happening next door. That's a plea, first and foremost, because the people who are the frontliners in as far as violence against women and children at this point in time, it's going to be our communities. Secondly, our shelters are open to those that are finding themselves with this difficulty when they call the number that we have given. Thirdly, we are looking at, again, the employment of social workers, many of the social workers that have not been employed. This is the period where we're looking at how can we make sure that we employ more social workers to go out there and do their house visits. We are also looking at volunteers who can visit the homes, but I know, Karima, it's very difficult because we are saying on the one hand people must stay indoors, but the bottom line is that for those social services that are needed for our people now, the regulations have been passed. Our own directive is just waiting for me to sign it off now, so that all our social services that usually are open must be open, and the social workers. But beyond the services, we are also working with NPOs, non-profit organizations, and NGOs. We are accrediting them to be able to continue doing their work, which would include, if in case we get alerts that there's a problem somewhere, they should be able to reach out there. Then also the police are out on the street, the military is also out on the street, so we are hoping that those women and children who find themselves in a difficult situation, they will make the call. And when they make the call, by the way, the call center is able to identify from which area is that call coming. Those are just some of the systems that we are putting in place. But again, the call from me as a Minister of Social Development is to get all these systems working at provincial and at local level, because that's where the challenges are. It's at local level. We've also called upon the councillors to be up and about and make sure that they have systems that enable people. This is a difficult time, but violence against women and children is not going to stop because there's corona virus. We understand that people are going to be under stress and strain. That's why, by the way, Karima, there's even parents who have co-parenting. We're asking us, will they be able to visit their children, or can their children visit them? We are saying to them, not this time around. It's not possible. We can't have it because we don't want to expose neither the parent nor the children.
Minister, can I
just people to be just tolerant at this point and be able to communicate through other means.
Okay, Minister, let me just come in here. In terms of people that are in desperate situations, because this is, of course, violent situations, have the police and the army got instructions from their superiors that if they come across victims of abuse and victims of violence, gender-based violence, that they can excavate those people out of those situations and put them in places of safety? If that is the case, how is that going to happen?
Well, I take it that maybe I take it for granted that any human being who sees abuse or violence would act immediately. And then those that are law enforcement, obviously, we are expecting that they would act. It might not necessarily be the ones who are on the street looking for something else. They will be able to direct to the relevant structures within the police what needs to be done. I think that's one area that you are now talking about, that I think from here I need to raise it, because I don't think that's something that we spoke about as to whether they get the directive to do that or not. And I think I'll take that forward to the net joint, because it is an important point that you are raising.
Minister, the other thing is we have many child-headed households in South Africa as a result, for example, of HIV/AIDS and also of our migrant systems. What are your directives to children, and most importantly, how are you communicating with them? I know that the SABC as a public broadcaster have made their radio stations available in local languages, but how exactly are you communicating with child-headed households where children are obviously a lot more vulnerable than they were before?
That responsibility falls very squarely on the shoulders of the provinces. We have issued that directive that we need to make sure that communication is centered by them. Of course, from where I am as a minister, I can communicate through TV, through radio stations. In fact, GCIS has been organizing that we go and at GCIS and connect to more than 60 local radio stations. But again, the best communication at this time will have to be the communication that is done by the MECs, by the premiers at local level. But also we are expecting that we are supposed to be producing pamphlets and leaflets that are supposed to be delivered at homes. That's the only best way that we can do. And of course, we are very grateful to the fact that the media has also stepped up. You come to the press briefings, we do interviews of radio. I was on radios this morning. That, to me, is also you guys on your side have stepped up and are opening up the airways for us to be able to communicate to the public.
Minister, I want to ask now a bit of a policy question, because obviously we have seen the world respond differently. We've got huge inequalities in South Africa. There's always been a push for a social grant and a grant for people across the board, given our poverty stats, our inequality stats, and that the grant should be universal. We don't know how long this virus is going to be with us. I do understand that different task teams and institutions have been told to look at scenarios and the numbers. Is a policy change perhaps on the cards, Minister, where we work towards a universal grant for everybody, or for the most poor of the poor across the board, considering the devastating impact that COVID-19 is having on our economy?
Yes, the discussion started not on the basis of COVID-19 as such. The discussion started with us understanding the levels of poverty, unemployment and inequality in South Africa. You know that some people have even been calling and saying, no, the social grant is a waste. I want to say to our people out there, this government will make sure that the discussions continue, and in particular taking consideration of what is happening now, the impact that this is going to have, and the fact that our economy is going to suffer even more, and the fact that many of our people are going to be jobless. It is our responsibility as government to begin to say, let's look at post-corona and how we are going to be able to deal with those people that are going to be out on the street without money. What is it that we're going to do from a social development point of view? And the universal coverage is something that we've been discussing, but of course it kept on being disturbed by the fact that where does the money come from, because our economy is not doing well. My view is that this virus has put us in a difficult situation, but it has woken us also in some areas of slumber to say that we need to look at things very differently. The world is going to be different from now, so our policies will have to go under the hammer again in terms of what is it that we need to do to make sure that we make life easy for our people. My department is responsible for the well-being of South African citizens, and the focus is on the vulnerable. There's going to be more vulnerable people out in the streets in the next coming years because the impact of this is going to be with us for a very long time.
Minister, so just as a final word on policy options, can one deduce from what you've just said is that as Minister of Social Development, you will be advocating for a universal grant, given the fact that we are sitting in a massive crisis and that everything has changed and that we need radical solutions now?
Yes, that will be our proposal, but of course, Karima, as you know, it will depend on the Minister of Finance, it will depend on a wide range of issues, but as a Minister of Social Development, I'm already seeing the challenges that we are going to face because the calls are coming in now. Only just on day 2, people already in their homes are saying, we don't have food, people have come back, and those that are at home, they are saying, I got a call this morning from a woman in KZN who was saying to me, the people who never used to be here during the day are here during the day. What am I expected to do with them? Because under normal circumstances, they would have been at work. 21 days of 3 meals per day, when normally it wouldn't be like that. What are they supposed to do? So you can't ignore that. I can't ignore that. I've got to start thinking much further and say, what is it that we're going to do? And I'm also happy with the fact that, you know, we're getting a lot of support also from the private sector, from other people who are saying to us, we're in this together. Let's look now and see what we can do as of immediate, but also let's start talking beyond Corona.
Absolutely. Minister of Social Development, thank you so very much. That is Lindiwe Zulu speaking to us there about the fact that her government is very much open to looking at a universal grant given the devastating economic consequences. Up next, the role of the banks and how they will ease the financial burden of businesses and families hit by COVID-19, including small business. Don't go anywhere.